Hello, I'm Mr. Pleasant Books. For this book talk, we'll be discussing The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. This is a book I haven't actually read in, I'd say probably 10 to 12 years, and I just figured why not? I'll do a book talk on it because I remembered I liked the series so much. I liked the book so much. It was kind of the first big epic novel series with the Sword of Shannara, the Elfstones, and so on that I'd ever read, and it stuck with me. It's kind of shaped how I like fantasy, and also how I think of books being written. And okay, but let's see the actual book itself. It's a story about a young man who has a Shea and his brother Flick, who go on an adventure to find the Sword of Shannara, or the Sword of Truth, because they need to defeat the great evil that has been shadowing the land for the last several centuries. And they are sent on this quest by the mysterious stranger Alanon. And as they go on, they gain more people to go with them. They travel across the four lands, and they just see and experience truly incredible and epic things on this quest. I think that's all I can say without going into spoilers, other than to say if you're looking for a book to start, and if you're not sure, even if you like fantasy, this is where I would go. The Sword of Shannara would be a perfect example of the first thing to go for. All right, but yeah, from here forward there will be spoilers. Just letting you know, spoilers. Bye. Alanon. I really like the character Alanon. He's about 7 feet tall, and he's really, just kind of a mysterious character, but he has power and he has knowledge and he uses it. I mean, he does go into these sleeps where he's kind of gone from the land for many many years, but when he wakes up, he travels everywhere. He goes and sees the kings and the princes and the royalty, those who are in charge, to remind them that, hey, I'm still around and I'm still the one who knows everything, and I'm still the one who has this power. So listen, and listen well. And I like that. I like that Terry Brooks had that character, because it really does bother me how much of these new series just have these people of great power who just hid for centuries or millennia and let everything just go to crap. And then when they pop up, they're surprised and frustrated that nobody wants to listen to them. Why would they listen to you? You've done nothing. Al-Anon's not like that. He's hardcore, uses his magic against not just the great evil beings like the Skull Bearers, but also against the regular beings like the gnomes and the trolls, because he needs to stop them, and that's the best way to do it. He's not really a sword fighter. And then Minion Lee. I like his character, even though comes off as a bit arrogant and full of himself. I still like his character, but he's there for Shea. He's there for Flick. He's there for Balinor, for Hendel, and even though he's kind of full of himself, he learns responsibility on this trip, because I mean it's the story seems like it's going pretty fast. These are vast distances that they're covering, so he has time to see Balinor, a prince of Calahorn, see how he acts, see how he carries himself, and begins to learn from that. He has Hendel, somebody who he really admires, the dwarf, that is tough but is fierce, and that he does his duty and does it well no matter what's coming after him. And so he starts to see these examples that he can follow to become a better Prince of Lee, which is really cool to see that growth in him. And then you have Shea, who has the Elfstones, which are just I've never wanted a magical item from a book more than I wanted Elfstones. How cool they are. I couldn't use them because I'm not part elf, but it's just so cool the way that the Elfstones work. They can find stuff, or they can burn the Skullbearers to a crisp. They're so cool, and then there's just so many different kinds of Elfstones. It's just really really neat, the Elfstone that the Elfstones were created by Terry Brooks. And then Hendel, I'll say this, Hendel is one of my favorite characters. One of the best examples of a dwarf. He's stubborn. He doesn't back down, but he's also smart and he's clever, and he knows what he's doing and how to do it. That is all hallmarks of a dwarf in any written series that I've come across. That is how a dwarf should be. And then you find out that the elves have always been around, and that even though the world was bombed so much, there are still little pockets of that civilization around. Because as they're traveling through the Wolfstag Mountains, they find an old city where the steel beams are still up, and I guess a cyborg, because it's part animal, part machine, monster attacks him. Which, if we have something like that coming up in a future war, that's going to be freaky. And they have to fight it, but they see human bones and they see all these signs and things up. It just sounded so neat that you could go and look through this. And the gnomes, they're like human, but they're shorter. They got yellow skin, and the trolls with the bark-like skin. The rock trolls are huge, the best fighters in the world. Terry Brooks just did so well with this series, and he made with his book, with the characters. Panama Creel, loved that character. Illicit, the rock troll that Shea runs into with Panama Creel, when they find the actual sword of Shannara. The Warlock Lord, who's defeated by the sword of truth, because he can't because he can't handle the truth. I'm sorry, that was terrible, but it's just the way he made it, and that Shea, because the original wielder of the sword, Jerry Shannara, he couldn't believe the truth about himself, even though he'd been told it was coming by Bremen. He just couldn't believe it was happening. He didn't think that truth could be there because you hide who you are. Whereas that was affecting Shea as well. It's because I think, personally, Shea wasn't told about it, and he'd been having all these doubts and worries about himself on the trip, that he was able to kind of push that truth out there so he could view it objectively, so that then he could then use the sword against the Warlock Lord, and that was very well written. And then, the Valley of Shale, where they meet the Ghost of Bremen, or Alanon summons the Ghost of Bremen, his father, to tell them what's going to kind of give them a glimpse of the future. There's just so many wonderful things in this book. It's a bit long, but it's just incredible. Like I said, if you haven't read it yet and you come this far, this is a book I would recommend you start if you're looking for an epic fantasy read. Start with the Sword of Shannara. It is absolutely worth it. And then just to go a little bit over the lands before I end the video, is you got the lowlands of Cleet, which sound depressing. You got the Black Forest, which actually sounds pretty neat, even with the wolves. Paranor sounds like it'd be so cool just to explore. The Northlands, the Southlands, the Westlands, the plains of Strelheim, the city of Cyrus, and the way that the Warlock Lord's army marches in and starts to fight. Just the way that he describes the lands is just incredible. Like I said, this was my first epic fantasy read, so maybe I'm still seeing it through those rose-tinted glasses, but truthfully, I think The Sword of Shannara is just an incredible, amazing book. I'm so glad Terry Brooks wrote it. That's all I have to say about the book. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Mr. Pleasant Books. For my next book talk, I will be discussing Basil Broketail by Christopher Rowley. Thank you for listening. Mr. Pleasant Books. Talk to you later.